Hi, everybody. Welcome to our session with Nat and Jess, the amazing duo behind Mac and More. On today's quick lunchtime sesh, we're going to hear more about their agency, how they got started, how they manage it, being just the two of them, being parents, and all the demands that come with that. And also, we're going to talk a lot about the model, how to manage a business that works for you in that scale, and also pricing, because they're so good at talking about that. But basically, the way it's going to work is they're going to whiz through us a presentation to get started. And then if anyone has questions, please pop them in the chat. Otherwise, I have a list of questions that people have submitted. So we're going to try to go through as many as possible. For the ones that are here, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat and tell us why you're here, what you're interested in hearing about, and we'll get started, I guess. So Nat and Jess, please take it away.
Hey, well, thank you so much for having us. I was trying to remember when we did our last sort of workshop with you, but I think it was definitely before I had my son. So quite a few years ago. So thank you so much for inviting us back. We love what I Like Networking does, and really excited to contribute.
Thank you.
Share this presentation.
Great.
Okay, the classic question. Wait, is it gonna? Yeah. Okay.
Can you see?
Okay, perfect. Off you go, Jess.
Well, I want to start off by saying that Nat and I have been on a really big journey to get profitable. So before we even begin, I don't want anyone to feel kind of like too overwhelmed. We know how tough it is right now. It's taken a real journey. So, you know, the biggest message we kind of want people to take away today is just to be kind to yourself. There's only so much one person or two people can do. And then the rest is down to a lot of the market and luck and etc. But sharing kind of our learnings hopefully will be a little bit valuable and kind of give you a little bit of sense of a direction and help along the way.
Always does this. Always. The first one, I literally tested it. Why is it not working?
Love a little tech meltdown.
It's literally not.
It's always like that.
Won't even let me go off it.
Is it on Canva? Because sometimes you can.
Wait, hang on. It's like. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. It's literally frozen. What is it? Never usually does this bad. I know.
If you need to unshare and share again, it's totally.
Yeah, it's lost my I've lost even my cursor.
Yeah, if you could maybe start from your side and unshare, then maybe we can see if we can reboot back up.
Oh, here we go. Stop. Can I go? Right, hang on.
Thanks for bearing with us, people.
Sorry, everyone.
Oh. Whoops. Something else is being shared.
Okay, right. We're in.
Good.
Okay, right, go.
Cool. Right. We'll start from the beginning. So we're gonna just take you through a little bit about who we are, not too much.
Guys, we're seeing like some messages.
Where you're
There you go. Try again that.
Yeah.
Sorry, everyone. There you go.
This is not the chart we want.
This is like Nat's worst nightmare. I'm always like rolling with the punches. She hates stuff like this. Right, we'll start again. So we'll start off with talking about our story, because for us it's really important. Just again, how I said at the beginning about being kind to yourself, and kind of where we came from and where we're at now. The setups, so sort of getting it right from the start, which is that thinking about kind of like what that kind of model looks like. Is it you on your own? Is it you sort of teaming up with a partner? Defining your difference, so really thinking of kind of that what makes you stand out. Your money mindset, so pricing with confidence. There's quite a few different elements to think about. Pitching like a pro, and then some useful resources that we found really useful. So a little bit about background in our story. We started in 2016. I mean, it's felt, to be honest, like it's been quite tumultuous ever since we started. There's always been something, including a global pandemic, but it felt like a time of change, and we wanted to feel like we were part of a movement for something. So in advance of that, going freelance or starting a consultancy, it didn't feel as accessible because the internet kind of didn't offer up those kind of opportunities. But 2016, we got made redundant and we kind of realized, actually, this is our time. There's something happening. And also this kind of sort of value set, it made us kind of believe in kind of this change that we wanted to see in the industry and sort of women sort of leading the way. So redundancy was really tough. I think the first thing to say is that our self-confidence took a massive knock. I think it's really quite normal if you're out of work or you get let go from an organization to kind of blame it on yourself and kind of ask yourself the question, is it me? Is there something that I'm not good enough? Am I not stepping up to the plate? When often it's down to kind of the business structures or the leadership team not running an organization properly. But what redundancy gave us as a gift is resilience, which is absolutely a requirement of being freelance and running a business. You're going to get pushed down a lot. You're going to have lots of things that fail, that don't work out, and you need to be able to get back up again. And I love the definition of sort of an ability to recover from or adjust easily to misfortune or change. So resilience is like a muscle. Keep building that. That's definitely been so invaluable for us. And it was also a time to think differently, as I was saying, with all of those sort of cultural things happening. We really thought about kind of our positioning and kind of what we wanted to offer. So it was never just about offering creative services and kind of, just sort of having a sort of drop down list of the services we provided. It was thinking bigger than that. It was like, what do we want leadership to do with creative ideation? How do we want brands to look in the future? What type of clients we want to work with that are doing really cool things and making a difference? It really felt like we had the ability to kind of like, even in a small way, create some change. And as part of that kind of helped build momentum and excitement about people wanting to work with us. And finally, on this little section, it's me and Nat, which you see a little picture there when we're not sort of screwing up workshop presentations. But a really big part of our success is our partnership. Absolute kudos to anybody who does it alone. I mean, there are times it's incredibly hard, just the two of us, but we always have each other. And I think that's something that we don't take for granted. So well done if you're kind of out there and you are sort of a solo entrepreneur or freelancer. We know how tough that can be, which is why communities like this are so important. But when we started the business, I think we had this same vision and values. And even though Nat and I are really different in a lot of ways, we absolutely are rooted in the same value system. So that's so important when you're thinking about picking a partner. If you don't have the same beliefs or you don't see the world in the same way, I think it's difficult to kind of keep aligned as all of this change and you kind of grow as an individual and as a person. Also be very aware of what you're good at and what you're not. I have an attention span of a flea. I'm a good starter. Nat's a brilliant finisher. I've got a kind of strategic eye. I've got like 100 ideas a minute. Nat is able to root it down and kind of create something that feels more solid out of just an intangible idea. And that kind of magic being brought together is really special. But both of us have to understand what our blind spots are and where the opportunity is. And that understanding of a deep specialism in something, as opposed to kind of being a jack of all trades either. And a few little brand names that we've worked with along the way. 8 years later, can't believe that it has been 8 years. But we've worked with some big global organizations, really interesting sort of femtech startups, technology startups, even the likes of TfL. It's been quite incredible, the roster and the kind of, the ability. And we managed to get all of those connections and brands off our own back and starting from scratch. So it really is there is opportunity to kind of go out there and build something. And yeah, we're really proud of where we've got to all these years later.
So when you're thinking about establishing a partnership, a consultancy, a small agency, whatever it is that you're looking to build, even really a brand, personal brand off the back of your kind of freelance like ambitions, it's really easy to think about, what am I selling? What can I do? What will I offer? And actually, we've realized that the most important step before that is really about defining your difference. Because ultimately, even if you search graphic designer London or copywriter Edinburgh on LinkedIn, there's going to be thousands and thousands and thousands of people who are essentially offering quite similar skills, but it's going to be the reason why people will come to you is because of a a point of view, an angle. It's something that makes you the best person to work with rather than anyone else. So the way to do that, we think effectively, is actually to start with external. So rather than thinking about you individually, think about your clients. Who would you love to work with? Who have you worked with before? Interview those people, uncover what they're up against at the moment, what are they finding difficult, where are their challenges, what are their big pain points, what are their big emotional drivers, you know, what things are going to make them want to press go and work with someone. And then think about what you care about. So your approach to it, how you're going to solve that problem, not just by a particular service or a particular product or a workshop or a piece of work. It's actually about, you know, how you're going to engage with them, how you're going to communicate with them, how are you going to deliver results. Starting from that point of view around your customers and because essentially people are going to buy from you if they've got a reason to. Then once you've established that and it's very like commercially, you know, centered, then you can build your brand identity in a way that is going to answer those problems, pain points. It's going to solve those things, but it's going to do so in a way that's really distinct to you. So I think creating that point of difference, but then your distinctiveness can come off the back of it. And distinctiveness is really important to be memorable and to build a brand. So, you know, there's so many components to this, but, you know, thinking about not just a visual identity, like your logo, you know, what your brand looks like, but also your verbal identity. If you're, you know, Jess and I as two people speak in very different ways, we've had to develop a verbal identity for Mac and More that doesn't sound like just one or the other of us. It sounds like the brand we want to be. Then you can write a clear positioning statement. So what is it that you believe in and that you think you can solve? Defining who you are, what you do and why you do it. And actually for us, as I said, it's not just Jess and Nat as freelancers, it is Mac and More, but a big part of our USPs that's been validated by our clients is that they love working with the founders of the business. So showing us as people behind there is also really important.
And I think just a little point on that as well is that it is people by people, but there's a professionalism that comes up, and that always, like a website tends to be, or social media accounts, a sort of digital shop front we look at. It's the first impression that someone's got from a sort of buying process of, should I use that person? So it is really important that you kind of put your best self forward, especially if you are, for example, a creative or a designer, then that should be kind of showcased in kind of, again, that digital shop window. It's so important.
And yeah, absolutely. The final piece of that, once you've kind of defined that difference, once you've built an identity that feels really like that's going to be distinctive and stand out to your customers, the hardest part is putting yourself out there, which we know can feel so exposing. Posting on LinkedIn, Instagram, showing up, you know, putting yourself out there and selling yourself essentially. But if you don't do that, people cannot find you. And if they cannot find you, they don't know you exist, then they can't buy from you. So we believe in kind of breaking the content you share down into these sort of 3 areas. One is about selling. So share your case studies, share testimonials. That's a great reason why people would say yes to working with you. Proof points about your work. What was the impact? Be really tangible about that, and ask people for testimonials after every project. And then inspiration. So this is about your kind of thought leadership, your point of view, your why, what you care about, something that's going to really kind of allow people to form a connection with you. And then finally, it's about education. So if you've developed this completely unique approach, or your process, your view on creativity or your services, you know, break that down for people, offer that added value. That doesn't mean you're giving, you know, your services away for free, because ultimately you want people to come to you. But I think giving people something that's valuable is a great way to build trust, which is also a great way to get people over the line to buy from you. Over to you.
Get paid your worth. So this is something that Nat and I have spent a lot of time on. To be completely transparent, when we started out, we had no idea what we were pitching. We literally put our finger in the air and made it up. And actually, really funny, just before we kind of came to do this workshop, we went to see a billboard at Blackfriars Station that features the fashion brand Align. And that was one of the first sort of big naming projects that we worked on. And we got paid such a small amount of money for that, which is now really a global fashion brand, at least European. And it was because we just didn't really understand our pricing or understand our worth. And add in also the context of even when, again, we started, it was economically, it was quite challenging, obviously in the pandemic as well, even more so. Creative marketing budgets are the first to get cut. So really understanding kind of like the pricing structure, understanding the context of the market, and kind of being a bit savvy is super important if you're going down that kind of buying process. The first thing to start with, that this is something that I am so believe in, and it's honestly been fundamental for me, because before I started Back and More, I was absolutely shocking personally with money. I would live by paycheck to paycheck. I would just get paid, I would spend it. I mean, admittedly, I didn't get paid a huge amount, again, in the creative industries, but it always went down to zero. And I know, even especially now that, I mean, especially if you're London based, like the rental markets and all these types of things make this so difficult. But understanding about your relationship with money and understanding about this kind of scarcity and abundancy mindset is really quite groundbreaking and really game changing. And it makes you feel like you're more in the driving seat of where you want to go. And these little changes can just be so helpful. So starting off from Mac and More, I think both of us had this kind of like scarcity mindset. So mine was just that I'll just spend whatever I get, and then always feeling stressed that I didn't have much. And I think from Nat's perspective, it was just always like, I need to keep it safe, so I'm never going to spend anything. And there's that other side of the coin where actually making really kind of sound, thought about investments, especially when you're running a small business, is really important. So that shift, which has taken over time, and we've got some examples in our resources of places that you can work on this, being grateful for what you have, thinking about investing in the long term, thinking about your money decision making is the number one thing to start with before you even start thinking about pricing, because that psychology of money and that way you show up with money, it also kind of is shown in front of your clients too. If you're going to pitch, if you're going to negotiate, you have to kind of have a good sense of feeling around the topic of money. So with pricing strategies, I don't think there's one size fits all. And I've kind of done a quick list here, which I'm sure many of you will be familiar with. The reason why I have underlined value-based pricing is where we have decided to go, and it's where we are most profitable. So I think the problem with the creative industries is that we tend to pitch by time, sometimes by hour, sometimes daily. And in the mind of the client, people think that they're buying us for 8 hours. And it's never really 8 hours of a day if you think about what is entailed in a day, getting lunch, doing X, Y, and Z. The feedback amounts that sort of like add up and how long that takes. And we just found that it kind of devalued kind of the output that we were creating. And one of the things we've done over the last couple of years is work with a growth advisor to change our sort of pricing models. And this idea of value-based pricing came up, which was thinking about what is the value the client's going to get from the work rather than the time. Because, for example, if we do the naming for a huge fashion brand and they're going to go out and make potentially 100 million and we're being paid £500, you know, we're not seeing the value of what that brand and what that creative work is actually going to give that business. So that's been a really big game changer for us. And the way in which you approach value-based pricing is thinking about your day rate roughly, but then thinking again about kind of the end impact of what that work's going to deliver. So that would definitely be our recommendation. There are always times where fixed prices or daily or hourly are relevant, but I think if you're going in on big projects, always go with value-based pricing. Just a couple of tools that I think are really useful. Here, Trustead, which is a freelance rate calculator. This is just really helpful if you kind of want to work out and do the maths. I'm shocking at maths, so I always need some sort of technology to help me. And then this kind of major players creative industry census. So this is free. You can download from their website, but it helps you benchmark like copywriters, designers, all different types of kind of disciplines, and see what the industry is paying. So at a minimum, you shouldn't be going in London under the benchmark. And if somebody pushes back on price with you, you can refer back to that and say, this is an industry standard cost for what I supply.
Okay, so you've basically now worked out your money mindset. You've decided you're going to, you know, pitch your worth confidently. You've set your pricing. But actually doing the pitching is, you know, it's quite exposing, it's quite vulnerable. And I think that, again, something that you have to build that resilience muscle around is that people will try and negotiate with you. they, you know, if they turn you down, but say you say your cost your fee for something, if they turn it down, that's not based on your value, that's based on their circumstance, that's based on their, you know, perception of what something is worth, it's based on their budget. Like, you have to always keep steadfastly, you know, understanding of your worth and really try and hold on to that. Couple of quick tips, we won't spend too long on this, but a few things that we've picked up along the way. If you get no pushback at all, we had a real run of time where we were undercharging, but being like, gosh, we're landing all of these proposals, like every single one people saying yes to. And it's because we were undercharging. So they were being like, that's a great price for us. So if you get no pushback, you're pitching too low, keep trying to add on 10%, 20%, whatever it is, nudge it up until you get to a comfortable place where you can basically, you know, handle a negotiation. Always discount on deliverables, not money. So if someone says, oh, can I have £500 off, £1,000 off, whatever it is, say, brilliant, yeah, of course. Which of the deliverables on this list is least important to you? And we'll remove those to fit in with your budget and your price. So then you're not devaluing your services. Focus on profitability, not just numbers. So as a consultancy, we hire in design talent, we hire in, you know, photography, web development. So we might get a budget for a project, which is really big, you know, on paper. But if we're spending half of that money or more paying out to other suppliers, it's not profitable for us. And then just a couple more things. So, you know, free work right at the beginning to build a testimonials, to build a case study, maybe, yeah, okay. But as you go, you know, don't do anything for free. It's only going to like help. It's only going to sort of diminish your sense of self-worth and the value of the work that you're offering. And the last one is avoid requests from friends and family, because they will always bleed you dry and it will never be a quick fix or a simple thing as you think.
Great. And here are just some useful resources, which I'm sure Isabel's really familiar with and has probably shared within the community. But The Psychology of Money is just the great book I was talking about, just thinking about mindset and it's the kind of the way that we show up with our kind of relationship with money. Even in the 8 years that we've been going, it's incredible to see, you know, the change of the way we talk about money and investment and kind of financial literacy, and especially when it comes to sort of a focus sort of on women. So Vestpod, This Girl Talks Money, Ellie, we kind of know personally, and she does a brilliant job. Female Invest, the book Girl Just Want to Have Funds, Your Juno. There's so many brilliant kind of ways to get started. And I think that when you are an independent business, it does sort of weave with who you are as a person outside of business and also, you know, the person running the business. So actually working out your finances personally can have a direct impact on the business as well. So definitely worthwhile kind of having a look at this space and kind of going on that journey if you haven't already. And then I've just included the book, The Tipping Point, because I think this has got some really interesting theories. Malcolm Gladwell has some really interesting stories about how you can kind of create a point of difference and kind of get people talking about you. And it just might spark off a few ideas about how to do that on LinkedIn or other channels.
Right, I'll stop sharing now so that we can get to the questions. I mean, I think I'll stop sharing, who knows? Oh yeah, it worked. Gonna help flashing up my entire personal message list.
Thank you guys so much. This was so good. For the ones that are here, if you do have a question, please pop them in the chat. Otherwise, we'll use the next 10 minutes to go through all the questions that we still received. I know a lot of the pricing ones have been touched upon, but maybe we'll get started. Are you guys ready for some quick fire questions? All right. First question we got was, how much do you need to budget to set up and focus on your own business as opposed to keeping it as like a side hustle?
Oh gosh, well, I think this actually probably interweaves with the kind of personal aspect that in a perfect world, having 3 to 6 months buffer ahead that kind of pays for your rent, pays for your, you know, living expenses so you can live is an ideal scenario. Now, I can appreciate in this current world that might be quite tricky to do. So it might be that going from a side hustle kind of maybe that expands a little bit more until you feel a bit comfortable before you take the leap. How that works is going to be individual to everyone, but I think just having like a little bit of an emergency savings, if you can, just gives you a little bit of that sort of cushion to kind of feel a little bit safe and that you're not kind of going to instantly kind of go into a sort of desert of no cash. Have you got anything like that?
No, I think you've covered it. I think that's
Marianne in the chat asked, thank you so much. Thank you. I'm glad you found this was great. But what are the cons of retainers?
Okay, so actually we've got a very specific answer on this. This is again through our experience, everybody's different. For us with retainers, if you say, for example, set a set fee every month and you have either a set number of deliverables or time that you're going to spend on something, over time, we found that the client expectation increases, but the value of the retainer doesn't. So if you're producing, for example, content for a client, they might actually get a bit fatigued of going, oh, we've kind of seen, what else is new? What else can I get from you? What else is, extra? And we found then that the profitability of the retainer goes down over time. So for us, we've actually been rethinking retainers rather than having just a set, amount that you feel like you have to kind of fulfill every month. Actually, how can you just keep a relationship going with a client and sort of do regular check-ins and then respond with kind of, new pieces of work rather than it be a set retainer, so you can still keep that value for yourself and profitability, value for them and profitability for yourself.
I think where it can work is if you've got a great client who's got a really clear brief and that it's someone you have a good relationship with, then I think, if you go a bit under that month from the retainer, likely they'll be like, look, it's fine, we can push that through to next month. If you've got somebody who really kind of wants constantly see the value and kind of doesn't really understand that sometimes you might be going over that retainer or under, then I think that's just where it becomes challenging. So I think a lot hinges on the relationship with that person. It can work, but only if you feel like you can work properly with that person and they brief properly.
All right, thank you. Now we had someone asking, at what stage should you start trying to secure bigger clients, and how should this be done?
Well, I mean, I think we secured some of our biggest clients really early on. And for me, it's about a confidence piece. I remember when we walked into one of our sort of biggest sort of client pitches, and it just felt like it was impossible. And then when we got the job, it just proved to me actually, how possible it is. So I think take the leap. Like, what's the worst that can happen? They say no.
As long as you feel like you can fulfill the work,
Yeah.
I think that's it. It's a clear brief, have everything in writing. And then if you feel confident that you can deliver on that, make sure you agree things with bigger clients. It's always payment terms and contracts. Are you going to have to go through a long procurement process? Will your cash flow allow you to do that? Like, a lot of the time, the bigger clients might be like, oh, it's 90 days payment terms and you've got to fill out 86 forms to get, on our books.
And I think
so it's asking all those questions and knowing about that.
Yeah, and try and think of not just bigger brands, because sometimes the biggest brands we work with had the smallest budgets. Think about who's got the most amount of money to pay you ultimately, because that's what really matters. So sometimes we've worked with some sort of middle of the road sort of SMEs that work in the technology space, not very sexy brand, not particularly something that like lights our world on fire, but they have a lot of capital to spend. And you need jobs like that to kind of supplement kind of your revenue stream and have diversity of that. And great if you've got the big brand. People love a sexy brand and a portfolio in the work, but often the case you've got to look at things and make decisions not just based on the work, but also on how much they're willing to pay you and how much they have available to pay you too.
That's a really great tip. Marianne actually asked a question that we received a lot of questions about, which is, well, she says, how do you create a pool of freelancers to work with, outsource projects, or are you working on all projects yourselves? We also received a lot of questions about, do you have any like third party like support like VAs or accountants? So how do you go about outsourcing, if anything, in your business? And I think those are really important questions for those that work in very small businesses or on their own.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'll start because I know Nat's got a point of view on this as well. The biggest thing to grow and stay small is to get people to help you with the jobs that you can't do or you're not very good at. So we do have an accountant. That's absolutely crucial. We would be lost without her.
Or in jail, probably.
Or in jail. No,
Filling out the forms wrong.
absolutely. Never in jail. But I think, yeah, we've got an accountant. We do work with a pool of freelancers. We've got a methodology for how we choose freelance talent that's in line kind of with our business positioning, what we're about, what we look for. I spend about 20% of my time meeting new creatives, kind of connecting with them, looking at their work and kind of making a kind of decision based on a decision-making criteria that I've kind of worked out over the years about what works and what doesn't. And that's how we've kind of increased our sort of pool of talent. I'm really always keen to kind of think about people who are brilliant, who might have just been pushed out, say, of an agency environment for whatever reason. And, you know, we get the real opportunity to kind of take that talent and kind of get them to kind of, you know, work alongside us. That's something that really excites and fulfills me. So we do have in terms of an internal perspective, we also have a growth advisor, which was something that we took on when we wanted to really take that leap. So that was somebody who was going to push us on how are you going to grow the profitability of the business? How are you going to think more about your pricing structure? What does your new business and marketing look like? And at the moment, we do a lot of that ourselves because we really believe in quality communications. I think a VA can definitely help on some things, but for us, new business, writing LinkedIn posts, creating content, that's got to be done, you know, by, I think, the freelancer or the founder itself. You can get support on those bits, but don't get somebody to completely, you know, be your voice for you when you're a 1 or 2 person business. I think that's really important.
Yeah, nailed it. All I would say is treat your freelancers really well. The relationship with them will be often a lot more important than your relationships with your clients. You can always get new clients. You can't always get new great freelancers to plug into you. But always make sure that you try and put a 20% markup on any freelance out. Say you're bringing a freelancer in, put a 20% markup in because you're going to be doing the briefing, the communications, you know, that is still going to be a time to you.
Do you have time for 3 more questions that we
Yeah.
have?
Yeah.
All right, amazing. So one question we received was in various formats. If you were starting today, what would be some of the steps you would take to secure your first clients?
I have to say, which feeds into I like networking. My network was the biggest thing that got me to that first move. And I still stand by today. People. You connect with like-minded people. You reach out on LinkedIn to someone that's a shit hot creative director you admire, a brand, and you just try. You just try and make a connection. You try and say hello. You try and meet people for coffee. This is a people industry, and I was lucky. I had a 10-year career in-house before I luckily was, you know, on the whole, a nice person, got on with a lot of people, built a lot of great relationships. They gave me the trust in the first chance when we started out. And today I would still say that I want our business to be based on people and relationships too. So just, yeah, keep connecting and keep pushing that forward because it is really invaluable.
Yeah, people are really way more willing to help you than you think they are. And even if you know, not every conversation, I mean, we had a sort of like people telling us all sorts in the beginning. And you know, it was like every meeting you have, if you don't think you can come out of it with a bit of new business, then don't do it. And that is just the opposite of our philosophy, which is you might, you know, genuinely ask someone to meet and ask for their advice on something, whatever. They could connect you to someone who could connect you to someone who could win you your first piece of work. Like, it's all about like forming those connections and nurturing those connections and actually being really, you know, real about it.
Amazing. Okay. I think a little segue on that question was how important it is to you to have a personal brand as a founder. And is this something you guys work on? I know the answer, but I feel like we should talk about it.
I think it's a really important point, actually. And as we said, kind of in the presentation, something that we've intentionally done is build the Macklemore, the brand, and think about what that brand looks like, how it sounds, what it, you know, what it does, who it's talking to. Like put Macklemore, the person, into a room with us and really flesh that person out. But equally, Jess and I, as individuals and founders of the business, and as we said, it's important to our clients that they do have access to us. So showing up as ourselves on social media, at events, thinking about that is really important. And we do have kind of different skill sets and different ideas about things, and we've got certain things that I will talk about, Jess will talk about, and I think it is really important to think about your personal brand. But probably the biggest tip that I would say that we had to learn along the way was, don't feel like you need to give all of yourself up into your personal brand. Like, we definitely kind of shared probably way too much, didn't we, for a really long time. And I think putting some boundaries in place of like, what's on the table for you, what are you prepared to talk about as part of your story versus what's actually just for you and will help you to keep some separation away from your identity being your work or your business.
And I've got two additions. When I did a shout out for some designers to kind of help us work on a project recently, I got so many DMs, and I picked the people who had a personal brand, and I felt like I actually was engaging with the person. So it really does matter, even the tone of voice, if they sounded friendly and if they sounded like they were a human being, and they kind of put the credibility of having a website and kind of having an idea of what they put forward. So I think that's one thing. And the other thing is test and learn. Our growth advisor is like, be prepared to get egg on your face. You might do a LinkedIn post that gets 1 like, really, and you're there with a tumbleweed thinking, I'm just going to give this up, I'm not very good at this. The next day you do it, you might get 200. It's not just about the numbers, it's really about learning and finding your voice, and that's a process. So the biggest thing is showing up every day and trying, and just trying to learn as you go, and being a bit kind to yourself when you're not very popular that day.
Right, we had another question. I think we might have time for that. How do you figure out what to write in your contracts? And there was a second question to that maybe we can fit it in if you guys have time, is do you have a contract with each other?
Oh, that's we've never been asked that before.
We don't.
We did actually write down ages ago.
I think we wrote down on a piece of paper kind of roughly what it looks like. We're again, to be transparent, 50-50. It's not all the time that I've recently come back from maternity leave, so Nat has had to take over a lot more of the work, and if we were kind of going to look at it like that, I'd be on a much lesser wage. That would obviously impact the way I could show up to work, but vice versa. I think the way that we look at it is that sometimes someone will do more and then the other person will pick that up, and and that has worked indefinitely for us. Each different partnership's going to be different. You've kind of got to take your own personal kind of perspective on that. I don't think it's a bad thing to have something contractually in place at all. We do have a contract. We have got a terms and conditions and a kind of engagement letter with any client that we made them sign. Again, full transparency, and to be, part of the privilege, I suppose, is that my dad's a lawyer, so he was able to help us with that. But I do think there will be some resources of places that you can kind of get something. Doesn't need to be the most comprehensive thing in the world, but if you have something kind of in writing, then I think that can be really important.
That is so crucial. As Jess said, ours is like this sort of, lawyer drawn up document, though there are so many templates out there that you can get, but it's actually so much more about the intention behind that, because if you, as we always say to everyone, you've got to have a clear, airtight brief that's been signed off by the client. You've got to have agreed payment terms. And if you get them to sign something, look, we're not going to take Now TV to court because they, pay us late on an invoice. Like, it's not going to happen. But it shows that you are taking yourself seriously and that you take the value of your work seriously. So, even if it's something quite simple, make sure somebody signs something, agrees to your terms, or you have that conversation.
There's a whole separate workshop we could do with spotting red flags in clients. So if you want us back, we'll be more than happy to share that.
100%, let's do this. I love talking contracts. I think I spoke a lot about this, not to talk about me, but we're doing this. I have this rule, which is like, you should never sign a contract with someone you do not trust. Like, the contract needs to start from a place of trust, not anything else. I've had when I was working in the entertainment industry and I was really young, I got burned once. And so I got this really intense entertainment lawyer and I hired him, and it's the best money I've ever spent in my life, because once we started having like those really airtight contracts for the talent that I was working with, it was a whole different ball game in terms of peace of mind of knowing exactly what was gonna happen. So yeah, I think we should definitely do a whole contract session. If anyone wants, they'll let us know.
Not sexy, so important.
So important. Guys, thank you so much for sharing everything with us. I think this was great. Please let everyone know how they can find you, get in touch with you, anything else that you might want people to know about or share and connect with you, essentially.
Well, you can find us, I mean, our kind of social platform of choice is LinkedIn, so you can find us there. Jess McIntyre and Natalie Moores, and then Mac and Moore is on there too, + in between. And our website is www.macandmore.com, and we're also on Instagram nicely as Mac and More. So yeah, come say hi.
Yes, and they're doing lots of great content pieces coming out soon. So we will be sharing. Guys, thank you
Like
again.
my posts.
Thank you again so much. And yeah, go like meet and chat to Jess and Nat, because obviously start expanding your network. That's a great place to start and create your own support system. Thanks everyone for coming. Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
so
joining.
much.
Question.
Bye.
Bye.